Hey, welcome to this video. I'm going to talk to you today about weakfish, one of my all-time favorite inshore saltwater species here in the Atlantic Northeast coastal states. We call them weakfish. Down in the Chesapeake Bay area, many refer to them as silver trout. They're also known as sea trout. Many people refer to these big ones, like the one I'm holding here, as tide runners. And others still call them unicorns because, like this specimen here, they are rare, not often seen, and very difficult to predict. Their spawning habits are not as well defined as many other species. They're said to be cyclical, which means they don't have a big successful spawn every year. Some years you may see lots of undersized weakfish. The following year you may see a growing population of slightly larger fish, and a year later you may see a lot of nice respectable specimens and less small ones. And then there are those years where they appear just like this, very few around, but the ones that are around are really jumbo. And some years they're hardly seen at all in different places. They range from probably North Carolina and the Chesapeake Bay north to maybe the southern edge of Cape Cod. I'm not exactly sure how far north they travel. I believe they do make it up into Rhode Island for sure. But definitely we see them around the whole of Long Island, from Raritan Bay and the western end of Long Island all the way to the eastern end of Long Island. And certain areas will be home to great numbers at certain times of the year. They do come here to spawn, and they're definitely here to feed. So their habits can vary from place to place, and for that reason, many different tactics to target them are used from one place to another. And some of my personal favorite ways to target weakfish are, of course, the lightest tackle ways. I like light spinning tackle, maybe an 8 to 17 pound test spinning rod, 4,000 size reel, and light braided line from maybe 10 to maximum 20-pound test. The one that you see me holding here, in truth, when I caught this fish, I was not targeting weakfish. I was targeting fluke. On the slack tide, I was casting out a 1.5 ounce green and white Spro bucktail, tipped with squid, and this big girl hit it hard and ripped the line from my 4,000 size spinner. Screaming drag, and it was an epic battle, and I landed the fish and couldn't be happier. It's an amazing memory that I will have for the rest of my days. She was 34 inches long and 14 pounds. That is by no means a record, but by today's standards, a very respectable trophy of a fish indeed. So here you see around 1997 aboard the Captain Mike from Howard Beach. Boat's no longer there, but in 1997 he was running the working man 4:30 p.m. trips, the evening trips for weakfish, and they were targeting weakfish generally by drifting with 3x3 rigs and sandworms. And this here is a pool winner for me. It was around 5.5 pounds, which at that time was a pretty big one for that place in time. And you see my friends there to my right, they were holding up more average size specimens. Here's a couple of nice 8-pound fish from the Captain Dan, which at the time was situated in Captree, New York. And the Captree boats, when they target the weak fish, they used to have prolific runs there in the Great South Bay. And they generally drift the party boats, and again, on the spinning tackle, they're throwing light jigs, mainly with soft plastics, and that is the preferred method of targeting the fish there. I have successfully targeted weak fish from shore locations and in the surf numerous times, and when you hook into a 5-pound or better weak fish, you know you've hooked something good. They just tear line from your spool. Their initial run is blazing and so much fun. Beautiful to look at, iridescent colors, yellow fins. They're two vampire fangs on their upper jaw, and they are fantastic eating fish in my opinion. Generally, from surf locations, I would throw light jig heads and soft plastics for them. Small bucktails also work very good if they're tipped with a soft plastic, even better. They will hit plugs, but generally I think the jigging technique is one of the most consistent and fun ways to target these fish. From the boat, there are also several methods that work, and they vary from place to place. In the Western Sound, I would find places where I knew they would congregate, and I would anchor my boat and I would work lures, throwing the small jigs to get the bites. And fishing this way, we would not catch great numbers of them. We worked hard for these fish, but you would get the tide runners. You would get big quality fish most of the time. Almost always keeper size fish. I don't even recall seeing an undersized weak fish when I was throwing the lures like that and targeting them this way. These fish that you're seeing here, they're all Western Long Island Sound tide runner weak fish, and I caught them all on the light spinning gear with small bucktails and jig heads with soft plastics. And if I had to pick one favorite way to catch them, that would definitely be it. I can't think of a better method because these fish are so well suited to a fight at exactly those proportions. Tackle slightly undergunned in proportion to the size of many of these fish, and power and strength. Just impressive and endless fun. A real challenge. Nowadays, I am targeting them in the boat out on eastern Long Island in the Peconic Bay, and there's a lot more small fish out there. I recently learned the methods and some spots where I can consistently target these fish. And, there'll be a few good ones there. There's plenty of keepers, but, the fish this year at least are definitely on the smaller side. I have caught a few on the light jigs so far, but the general method employed out there is drifting with a high-low rig, short leaders, and squid strips. That is one of the most consistent ways to get them. Some people like to put smaller gulps on the hooks. It's generally a porgy rig, and you drift certain areas where the fish congregate and you catch them. Um, there's a lot of small fish, and it gets repetitive. But, most days you'll get your limit. Um, I'm sure there's a few tide runners in the mix. I haven't encountered any yet. Another way they target them out there is just fishing over a chum pot. They put a chum pot down like they're porgy fishing, and they catch a lot of porgies as well. And again, with clam and squid and maybe gulp, but they anchor up, they put the chum pot down, and it's a mixed bag. You catch what you catch. You get a few porgies in the mix while you're drifting too, but it's fun because there's a lot of action. But quite the same fulfilling quality is not there, at least not yet for me. This was my second best weak fish ever, and caught her anchored up, throwing the small jigs. It was an epic battle. And there was another one swimming alongside of this, rubbing up against it, that made it look small. And back in the day, sometimes when you would net a weak fish, that follower would be right there affixed on the fish that was hooked. And you would sometimes get lucky and scoop two at once. You would actually free net a fish every now and then when they were thick back in the days. That was an amazing sight to see, and again, a memory that I will never forget. But I would be remiss if I did not include this information when it comes to the subject of this species. Most of your absolutely largest gator, tide runner, weak fish are caught while people are bass fishing, either on bunker chunks or on a live bunker. I believe some of those fish that were New York State records and world records, as I remember the stories, that's how they went. One commercially licensed fisherman who I've fished with several times, Frankie Fish, had the New York State record at 18 and a half pounds for a number of years, and I believe that's how he told me he caught the fish, on a live bunker. My friend Scott Joseph was a mate on the Karen Ann in Jamaica Bay, Howard Beach. Same thing. Karen Ann would live line and chunk a lot of bunker for striped bass in Jamaica Bay. And Scott, I think he had a live bunker out, and that's how he hooked a tide runner weak fish of over 18 pounds. And a lot of times you would be live lining bunker, and you would miss a fish, and when you reel the bunker up, you would see those two fang marks that had scraped the side of your bunker. So again, it's a rare occasion when that happens. It's not something you can expect. It's not a method that you would target these fish regularly, but consequentially, they do eat big bunker when these fish get really large, and that is often how the very biggest specimens are caught and landed. So here's the textbook definition. The weak fish, Cynoscion regalis, is a marine fish of the drum family, Cyanidae, a medium-large, slender marine fish. It is found along the east coast of North America. The head and back of this fish are dark brown in color with a greenish tinge. That's the Wikipedia description. So scientific name Cynoscion regalis, higher classification Cynoscium, phylum Chordata, order perch-like fishes. It's the symbol of Delaware, apparently. I did not know that. So these fish are related to speckled trout down south. They don't grow quite as large. What some of the Central American and South American countries might call Corvina. It's that family, and I believe the largest specimens of this family would be white bass on the west coast. Those things get pretty big, and their body type is very much like our weakfish. So that's all of the technical scientific information on the species. And as I mentioned, their diet is wide. They love squid. They eat clams. They'll eat all sorts of small fin fish, baby bunker, spearing. They love sand eels. They'll eat adult bunker when they get really big. They are an interesting species, and they are very captivating, and I just love them. That's all I have to add. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and tight lines. We'll see you soon.